Welcome back, traveler. The fire is warm, and every fire has its story, so cozy up and prepare yourself for tonight's tale. For tonight's story is not written in the pages of history, but whispered between smoke and memory. Join me by the fire and enjoy the story. The storm deepened as the night wore on. Wind moved softly through the narrow streets of Dunmere, carrying mist down from the mountains and pressing cold rain against the tavern windows in gentle waves. Inside the sleeping stag, however, the fire remained warm and golden, and no one seemed eager to leave. Several fresh candles had been lit near the hearth. The innkeeper moved quietly between the tables, collecting empty bowls, while the traveler sat patiently in his chair, turning his cup slowly between weathered hands. The villagers waited. Even those pretending not to listen had long since stopped their conversations. At last, the innkeeper's daughter returned with a fresh kettle of mulled wine and set it beside the traveler carefully. "Well?" she asked softly. A few smiles spread through the room. The traveler looked into the fire for a moment before continuing. The four travelers left the northern cliffs 3 days after finding the bangle. Outside, thunder rolled low across the mountains. They traveled south by the old forest roads, avoiding larger towns whenever possible. He glanced toward the rain-covered windows, not because they feared thieves. A pause, because strange things had already begun happening around the artifact. Several listeners leaned closer. The first incident occurred on the second night. The traveler folded his hands slowly. They had stopped beside a river east of the Black Pines. Nothing unusual about the place. Quiet water, birch trees, cold wind coming down from the hills. His voice softened with the memory. Elian, the cartographer, had taken first watch while the others slept. The fire crackled gently. Near midnight, the traveler continued. He noticed someone standing across the river. A child near the hearth frowned slightly. Who was it? The traveler shook his head once. That was the troubling part. His eyes reflected the firelight again. Elian could never describe the figure clearly afterward. The tavern remained perfectly still now. He claimed it looked distant, even though it stood only a few yards away. The traveler paused, like seeing someone through old glass. Rain whispered softly outside. The figure wore a dark cloak and carried a lantern that gave no light. A faint chill seemed to move through the room. Elian watched it for nearly a minute before realizing something else. The traveler lowered his voice slightly. It was not looking at him. Another pause. It was looking at the bangle. No one spoke. The next morning, he continued, Elian told the others what he had seen. He smiled faintly. The youngest among them laughed immediately. "Who was that?" asked the innkeeper quietly. "A man named Tomas," the traveler replied. "Charming, clever, very good at lying." Soft chuckles moved through the room. He believed Corvin's stories about cursed relics were nonsense invented to frighten children. The traveler turned the cup slowly in his hands. But Thomas changed his mind 3 nights later. The wind rattled the tavern shutters briefly. By then, the traveler said, they had reached the village of Norwin, a small trading settlement built beside an old stone bridge. His tone grew calmer again. They rented rooms above a bakery and planned to remain only until morning. A few listeners smiled faintly at the simpler details. But sometime before dawn, the traveler continued, Thomas woke to find the bangle missing. The room stirred immediately. He searched his belongings first, said the traveler. Then the others. Another pause. The windows were still locked. The fire cracked softly. No sign of forced entry. A woman near the back of the tavern crossed her arms slightly. So someone in the group took it. The traveler nodded once. That is what Tomas believed. His eyes drifted toward the flames. The argument that followed nearly ended the journey before it truly began. Outside, rain continued falling steadily across Dunmere. Elian accused Corvin first, the traveler said. Corvin accused Thomas. A small grin touched his face. And Thomas accused everyone. A few quiet laughs spread through the tavern again. But the strangest part came later. The traveler leaned slightly forward now, when the innkeeper downstairs complained about noises during the night. The room quieted again instantly. He claimed he had heard footsteps moving across the roof. The traveler paused. Bare footsteps. The lute player near the wall shifted uneasily. The travelers searched the rooftop at sunrise. The firelight flickered across the traveler's face. And there, he said softly, resting beside the chimney, another pause, was the bangle. Silence, untouched by rain. The innkeeper's daughter frowned. How? The traveler smiled faintly. That, he said, was the first time Corvin warned them to abandon the journey entirely. His fingers tapped once against the cup. He told them some objects do not wish to be carried. Outside, thunder murmured through the mountains once more. But despite the warnings, the traveler continued. They pressed onward. His gaze lifted slowly toward the gathered villagers. Because, by then, a long pause settled across the tavern. They had already begun dreaming about places they had never seen. The fire burned lower. Somewhere beyond the windows, wind moved through the dark pines surrounding Dunmere, and in the warm glow of the sleeping stag, not a single soul wished for the story to end.